from darkness to light. Your faith can make you whole today, for the Master is passing by. Yes, the Master is passing by. You can know what it means to live free. Yeah. Is passing your way. Make way for the Master. Jesus is passing by. Call out his name. He will bring you life. In him is the blessed hope for all men, that brings us from darkness to light.
WLAF salutes the 2019 Campbell County Chamber of Commerce Business of the Year Ayers Real Estate and Auction. Thank you for all you do for our community.
This is 1450 WLAF, an FM translator W265BQ, La Follette, Tennessee, USA, where it's now time for CBS Radio News, a presentation of Terry's Pharmacy.
We'll see you in La Follette, Jacksboro, or in our Terry's Pill Car. No matter where you are in Campbell County, you're liable to see us on deliveries. Just honk and wave.
The Terry's Pharmacy now delivers countywide.
This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original reporting.
I'm Steve Kaif, and it could be a last stand for Democrats in the Senate. The vote later today on whether there will be witness testimony at President Trump's impeachment trial. Top Democrat Chuck Schumer.
Senate Republicans face a choice today between seeking the truth and covering it up, between a fair trial and a farce.
Mr. Trump at a White House event noted a lack of Republican faces.
We have a lot of great senators that wanted to be here so desperately, but I said, just stay where you are and do your job, please.
There's news about one potential witness, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, as we hear from CBS's Stephen Portnoy.
This latest revelation, as reported by the New York Times, has John Bolton writing that in May, the president directed him to call the newly elected Ukrainian president to urge him to meet with his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, to talk about the investigations they were seeking. In Bolton's telling, the May meeting took place in the Oval Office and featured Giuliani, Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, and Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, who's now leading Mr. Trump's defense in the Senate trial.
Mr. Trump denies such a meeting ever took place. CBS News is monitoring an apparent security incident at Mr. Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate today in Florida. In 3 days, the first caucus voting in the Democratic presidential race.
I'm Jim Krasula in Iowa City, Iowa. Many University of Iowa students will get their first chance to vote during Monday's caucuses. What issues concern them?
Reproductive rights and gun legislation.
Education would probably be my top issue.
Mine would be criminal justice reform, healthcare, and climate change.
Rural economy.
One student told me there's a lot of political passion among young people who are concerned about the country's future.
Pentagon Chief Mark Esper says he backs a Trump administration move to lift limits on the use of landmines.
At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we have all the tools in our toolkit that are legally available and effective to ensure our success and to ensure the protection of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines.
Under Barack Obama, the U.S. moved closer to abiding by the terms of a 1997 global agreement that bans the use of landmines. United, Delta, and American among the airlines that have moved today to cut or suspend flights to and from China because of the coronavirus. Cheryl Gatto watching all the headlines at Chicago's O'Hare Airport.
For those of us that are here domestically and traveling through an airport like O'Hare, I think that we're just being very smart and wise and making sure of what we as a consumer are doing to take care of ourselves.
China slammed the U.S. decision that warns against travel to China, and fears about the virus have sent stocks tumbling today. Wall Street right now, the Dow is down 480. This is CBS News.
This is WLAF, La Follette. From West Elm Street all the way over to North 5th Street, hometown sports talk show host Keith Hatfield is on the air. Whether he's on the court, in court, or holding court, he's ready to talk sports. Hatfield grew up right here in La Follette, is a Campbell County Cougar, and welcomes you to his weekly sports talk show, Holding Court. Now, your host for Holding Court, Keith Hatfield.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to segment 1 at Holding Court today here on WLAF AM and FM and 1450 WLAF.com. Big sports weekend ahead of us. Tennessee sports always at the top of the agenda here. And to discuss that, we bring in our friend John Bryce. John, how are you today?
Great to be visiting with you, Keith. How about you, my man?
Doing well, doing well. First things first, Tennessee basketball Tuesday night at the arena, certainly not their finest moment of the season.
No, just a really bad loss in the big picture, Keith, and just particularly for the tournament hopes that this team was playing itself back into. And they're not completely dead, but it means at some point in time over the next few weeks, Tennessee really has to steal a game that it will not be expected to win. And I thought that was probably the worst loss since year 1 or year 2 of the Rick Barnes era.
And certainly the frustrating thing, and I think to most fans, John, Tennessee holds Texas A&M to 30% shooting from the field, but just totally unable to rebound at all. The Aggies actually corralling more offensive rebounds than Tennessee had total rebounds.
Yeah, and that was just uncharacteristic from the way that this Tennessee team has, despite all of its limitations, and they're more this year and they're more obvious this year, this Tennessee team has never lacked for effort or hustle or for having some guys that play bigger than what they actually are. But I thought that against the Aggies, for whatever reason, Tennessee never really had the passion and energy for which it's been known, and never really had the sort of grit that I also think that it has developed through the years under Barnes. And so beaten badly on the boards, especially badly on the boards at home, and I thought that was really strange to me to see that to see them a little bit maybe intimidated in some instances, I thought, the other night.
Well, and I think the strange thing about that is, John, you have to put, even against a team offensively as limited as Texas A&M, you've got to put forth pretty good effort to hold someone to 30% shooting, but then not to finish the possessions off, because the best defense in the world isn't of much use if you don't corral the defensive rebound.
Right. And look, this is a Tennessee team with a very small margin for error, and I think that game Tuesday night was maybe the biggest synopsis of that this season, that the difference between winning and losing for this Tennessee team right now is extremely fine, and it can take one off night in one area, like rebounding and like the way that the Vols just didn't seem to get any critical rebounds, didn't seem to really corral any of the must-have possessions or loose balls, and Tennessee cannot do that and sustain any sort of the building that it had been doing in recent weeks. Played very well at Kansas, and a little bit of a quick turnaround with traveling Saturday home from Kansas and then hosting that game Tuesday night. But again, as we've talked about so often, they've got to split certain games, and now Tennessee is going to be forced to try and steal one on the road because it couldn't close out, I think, what at the time was the number 169 team in Texas A&M in the net rankings or the Ken Palm rankings. One of those sets of rankings, Texas A&M was one of the lower-rated teams Tennessee has played this year, and just a bad loss.
Was part of it possibly from a mental standpoint? You spend all week with everyone patting you on the back that you played so well at Kansas that maybe you get the impression that you've arrived when you actually haven't?
I don't know if it's that, Keith, because I don't think this team probably can ever feel like it has arrived. I don't think that there's remotely enough weapons or depth or consistent shooting or consistent playmaking on this team that it's ever going to have the opportunity to feel like it has arrived. Maybe it was a little bit of a lingering effect from Kansas, whether it be from a physical standpoint or the emotional investment that was poured into that game and being a part of game day and just that atmosphere and really never, ever wilting. I'm not sure. I don't think this was a group that at all felt like it had arrived. I just think that this is a group that gave us a very stark reminder of just how razor thin its margin is, and a real weird game from a standpoint of getting hammered on the boards like that and not really finding consistent offense, and then only getting a combined 10 minutes out of Euros and Olivier is a little bizarre to me when you are getting beaten that badly on the boards, Keith.
And another thing that certainly Coach Barnes expressed his frustration with in the post game, Tennessee on about 4 different occasions stretched out to a 7-point lead, appeared to be about to take control of the game each time, and each time Tennessee almost immediately committed 2 or 3 open floor turnovers that gave Texas A&M a little bit of breathing room to get back in the game and allowed them to catch their breath. And certainly that you can expect that from Santiago Vescovi, but a couple of those turnovers are Jordan Bowden, Jalen Johnson. Your upperclassmen can't engage in that kind of play at this point, can they, John?
No, absolutely not. And A&M committed 1 turnover more than Tennessee, I think, in that game, and had a really lopsided assist to turnover ratio. But I think all of Tennessee's turnovers, it seemed like, came at the most inopportune times, or saw Texas A&M maybe better able to capitalize on those turnovers than what Tennessee was able to do when it forced some of Texas A&M's turnovers, or more Aggie turnovers came earlier in the game, things like that. But the final margin was a 5-point game, and Texas A&M had 5 more points off turnovers than Tennessee did. So to me, that's an immediate spot you look at. You look at how badly Tennessee got absolutely dominated on the boards. And then the other thing I find pretty bizarre is that in a home game, the Aggies shot twice as many free throws and outscored Tennessee by 12 at the free throw line. So this Tennessee team doesn't. 1 or 2 of those categories would make it incredibly hard for Tennessee to win a ball game, but those 3-4 categories right there, Tennessee would have almost no chance of winning against any sort of semi-quality opponent with its limitations and with getting beaten in all those categories like that: points off turnovers, rebounds, the free throw line, etc.
One of the things that came out of the game also, and not acting as if it was a great deciding factor because the officiating was uniformly terrible across the board Tuesday night, but the incident between Mike Nance and Rick Barnes, is that endemic of the attitude of officials these days?
Absolutely. I thought it was very much instigated by Mike Nance. I don't think there was any form. I've not seen any camera angle or talked to anybody or seen anything that would make me believe that it was anything other than Mike Nance expected Rick Barnes to move out of his way. And when Rick Barnes just held his ground and continued coaching, talking to his players, and Nance bumped him, Nance gave this incredulous look and wanted to pin it on Barnes. And I absolutely think that Nance not only should be reprimanded for that behavior, but it's something that the SEC has got to make public. We don't need to hear 6 weeks from now that Mike Nance didn't get to ref 2 games because he bumped Rick Barnes. I'm really tired of the fact that week in and week out. Look, Tuesday night, Tennessee sent student athletes into the post-game interview room and made them talk to the media. but nobody gets a word from the officials. And it's not isolated to the SEC, but the SEC, especially in a week in which it announces $650 million in revenue distribution, once again stands on a platform that allows it, Keith, the opportunity to be a trendsetter. And I really think that the SEC needs to look long and hard at officiating on both sides, and whether it's having Mike Nance or a crew chief speak to a pool reporter after a game or what have you. I think we have to take major steps to elevate officiating, and I think we have to take major steps to provide officials with being held to the same levels of accountability that we not only hold these millionaire coaches, but that we also hold these athletes. Every single person is judged and graded from their performances. There's a box score that we sit there and pick apart and see Tennessee get doubled up on rebounds, and we see Tennessee getting beaten at the free throw line, and we see plus-minus scores for these guys or PFF grades in football season. We don't see this stuff for the officials, and I just think it's continuing to damage the game.
And looking at that, and also looking at it from that perspective, isn't that a situation where you've got to, at some point, get some sort of consistency among your officiating?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I said it before with you. I can't remember if it was this past football season or a football season before, but again, when you talk about that revenue distribution, when you talk about the money that the league has brought in and the platform that the league has, you absolutely have to have more consistency. And I think you need to continue to take steps to make it a more professional organization for your officials, whether you set up some full-time officiating positions, however you want to handle it. I think you've got to take another step. You know, I think it was good for Major League Baseball years ago when it merged from having separate umps for the AL and NL into a single entity. I think that helped. And I think when you look at the college game, you've got to take that next step, particularly in football and basketball. You've got to take that next step towards professionalism, towards full-time officiating or more permanent types of officiating. Maybe you just have one full-time official in each crew in basketball, and then you rotate from your pool of candidates beyond that. But I think that there is a desperate need to take that next step with officiating, and particularly as it pertains to college football and college basketball.
Jumping over to football, National Signing Day rapidly approaching, John. Certainly a situation where Tennessee in need of a strong finish. How do things look out there on the recruiting front?
You know, Keith, I talked with people on campus within the past 24 hours. There's a lot of optimism that Tennessee can close this class out very strongly. Sorry, tongue-tied there. But there's a lot of optimism on campus, a lot of confidence. They feel like they're right there in the thick of it with the Evans kid, the number one running back in America. He just recently took an official visit to Tennessee. I really think that this is narrowing down into a Tennessee-Ole Miss battle, and this sort of ties into our conversation that we were just having about officials and holding them accountable. And this Evans kid has had a bizarre recruitment, and he signed his NLI with Georgia, so he cannot sign another NLI. He'll just sign financial paperwork and then show up to the school that he chooses ultimately at the end of May, 1st of June, what have you, the timeline around then. But as I've talked to a lot of college coaches this week from multiple places, talked to people in the Big Ten, a lot of people in the SEC, some ACC folks, there's been a lot of whispers out there about Evans's maybe he's a bad seed, or maybe he's too much drama, this, that, and the other. Look, I think a lot of that has emanated from Athens, Georgia, and I think that's ridiculous because they did do the right thing and allow Evans out of his NLI just 3 days after he signed it, or 3 days after it became public that he had signed it. But then I think that they went out of their way, according to coaches that I've spoken with, they went out of their way to try and tell other teams, oh, you better stay away from this guy. There's a lot of drama, this, that, and the other. Adults have no business talking about kids like that, especially when there's nothing tangible, when it's a lot of hearsay. And the other thing I will point out is that Georgia undeniably has maintained recruiting Evans up until this week, even after releasing him from his NLI. So you cannot tell me that you're going to have this approach where you're warning, quote unquote, warning other teams about this kid while you continue to recruit him. That just really disgusted me from a standpoint of recruiting and what we have all seen it become, but more so from the fact the paid adults in the room are going out of their way to make life choices more difficult for a young kid who doesn't have a great support system, but he does have help from his running backs coach at his high school there in Texas, and he does have help from Buck Fitzgerald and his training program that he launched in Texas a few years ago. And Buck, of course, is a former Tennessee player. So I just am really disappointed and disgusted by the fact that when college coaches don't get the kid that they want, or something a little bit unconventional happens in a recruiting process, then they want to take it out on the kid. And that just drives me crazy. And it's endemic, and it's another area that needs to have some more accountability in it.
Lane Kiffin involved in a bizarre recruitment of the number one running back prospect in the country. I think we've heard that story before, haven't we, John?
I was about to say, I know this is not anything new to people that have followed the recruiting game. And of course, at that point in time, Tennessee fans were hoping that Lane Kiffin got their man, and he did when he signed Bryce Brown in 2009, and Brown was the number one rated running back by rivals at that time, and played just 1 year at Tennessee and then at Kansas State, and then went and played several seasons in the NFL. And there's no set path for how a recruitment is going to unfold, how National Signing Day is necessarily going to unfold, but I just think the adults in the room, especially the coaches involved, need to be a little bit more what they claim to be about, and that is the kid's future. And just because the kid's future might not be in your program doesn't mean you shouldn't have an obligation, after spending all that time recruiting the kid, to help make sure he has the best chance for success. Especially, there's no need to badmouth the kid to a Big Ten team, say, when that's not a natural rival for you and you're an SEC school. And people this week told me that happened. But that's a little bit of my soapbox today. But Tennessee does feel optimistic with Evans. It feels very optimistic with the Beckwith kid out of Florence, Alabama. I think Tennessee closed very strongly on the early signing day when it added Morgan Joseph and a couple of other key players on that particular day. And I think this is, again, a very good opportunity for Tennessee to completely close out its 2020 class in strong fashion. And there are a lot of schools around the country that are essentially done. So there are not as many players. It's very anticlimactic now in February. But Tennessee is still at a point in its roster construction where Wednesday could be a big boost for the Vols, not just in this particular class, but for the roster overall.
And, John, for those who listened to us a couple of weeks ago, Tennessee this week confirming that the orange and white game will, in fact, be played on April 18th this year.
That's right. I think 2 weeks ago today, Keith, you and I visited, and I told our listeners then that the orange and white game would be April 18th. That has been confirmed for that Saturday afternoon. And spring practice, as we said then, would open the second week of March. It's opening around March 9th. I think you're going to see easily the biggest crowd thus far of the Jeremy Pruitt era for this upcoming spring game. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm around the program. There's some very tangible momentum around the program for the way the Vols closed the season, including the bowl win against Indiana. So that's it. There's football on the horizon once again. It's not very far away, just a little over 2 months, 2.5 months until Tennessee will play its spring game there inside Neyland Stadium. Some coaching moves coming this week. No real surprise that Jay Graham comes home to Tennessee. He wanted to be back in the area. Of course, the Vols had lost David Johnson to Florida State. David Johnson had been their best recruiter in this 2020 class, so there's some big shoes to fill, and David Johnson had been a key cog for Tennessee's improved recruiting efforts in Memphis under Jeremy Pruitt, but Jay Graham coming home. And a couple of other notes. Brian Niedermeyer, I think, is going to switch from being Tennessee's tight ends coach to linebackers coach. I think that's a good move for Niedermeyer, who has been also Tennessee's best recruiter under Jeremy Pruitt. And then Joe Ossovet, who came to Tennessee with a junior college background out of New York, is going to slide into Niedermeyer's position as tight ends coach. So I still think there may end up being one more opening on the Tennessee coaching staff before the end of February, a defensive assistant. But beyond that, Tennessee is putting together some nice pieces. Getting Jay Graham to replace David Johnson is really big because he knows the culture, he knows the fit, and Jay is an excellent, excellent position coach.
One final question, John, and maybe it's just me because I'm something of a baseball fan. Are you a bit surprised that a team with 2 returning preseason All-Americans that finished last year in an NCAA regional, are you surprised that UT baseball isn't getting a little more buzz coming into the season?
I am a little bit surprised by that because they've got some MLB draft prospects on that roster, a couple of returning All-Americans as you alluded to, and Soler and Crochet, and so I think this is a Tennessee team that could be positioned to take that next step. You made a great point there. They finished last year in a regional. I think this is a team that will be playing for a chance to host a regional.
Which certainly is where you want your program to be in baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's where Tennessee should be. I think, once again, I know this is something that Tony and I have talked about through the years. I think you and I have discussed it as well. When you take a minute to look, and basketball talent and football talent have both been on the rise in Tennessee in recent years. Baseball talent in the state of Tennessee is, I think, probably the biggest producer of top-end talent. I think that from Memphis all the way to the Tri-Cities, we've seen some really big-time players in the past decade or so, and we continue to see it. And I do think that the Tennessee baseball program, with the right direction and leadership, has a chance to be a program that perennially hosts a regional competition and gives itself a chance to then host super regionals and have shots at trips to Omaha.
John, as always, appreciate you taking some time out of a busy schedule to talk with us. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, every Friday here holding court with you, Keith, they can find me, and then find me on Twitter at John D. Bryce1.
John, always a pleasure, my friend. Have a great weekend.
You as well, Keith. Thanks, buddy.
That is John Bryce. I want to give a shout-out to our good friends at Grace Rehabilitation Center down in La Follette. Brian Leach and the folks there, give them a call, 423-566-2250, 423-566-2250 for all of your speech, physical, and occupational therapy needs. Back after this.
3, 2, 1, Happy New Game!
Now you can enjoy the new year with more games, more chances to win, and even more fun from the Tennessee Lottery. And you can play any way you like. Play quick and win big with instant games. Or try drawing-style games that pack a big money punch. So don't drop the ball. Make a resolution to put a little more cash and a whole lot of fun in your pocket today with the Tennessee Lottery. Game-changing fun. Please play responsibly.
Extra! Extra! Read all about it, folks. Feast your eyes on the most fascinating thing you've ever seen. The new special edition Jumbo Bucks. That's right. Extra! Extra! Hot off the press, these special edition Jumbo Bucks games are loaded with prizes and sweeping the state. Hurry! Get them while you can!
I'll take one.
Hot off the press, special edition Jumbo Bucks instant games, only from the Tennessee Lottery. Game-changing fun. Please play responsibly.
Hi, this is Percy Schultz from Walk-In Bathtub. Of all the years I've been putting in bathtubs, from the people from the teens with paraplegic to the people up in their 90s, they've all told me the same thing. I want a better life for myself. I want to be able to get in and out of the bathtub without falling. I want to help my overall health with arthritis, sugar diabetes, your knees, your legs, your back, all of that stuff that they're concerned about. I want to give myself a bath. I don't want somebody to give myself a bath. I want my independence. I want to be able to stay at home. I want to be able to take care of myself. I want to be with my family, and I want to be in my home. That's why that I want to buy a walk-in bathtub. Because I know one thing, what good is life if you don't have your health? And if I don't do something about it, who's going to. This is Percy Short. Come by the showroom. Take a look at the walk-in bathtub. See what I can do to help you. I'll turn the water on for you. God bless. Thanks. Have a great day.
Midnight Madness is back, and it's going to be big. It's one day of incredible savings on items store-wide. It's not just a sale. This is madness.
Midnight Madness is back. Save on Swaggerty sausage patties, $4.99 each. Sweet seedless white, red, or black grapes, $1.69 per pound. Boston Market meals, 6 for $10 and more. This Friday, noon till close. Certain restrictions apply.
Value every day. Food City.
You're listening to Campbell County's very own sports talk show, Holding Court. Now, back to your host, Keith Hatfield, over WLAF.
And we are back. Segment 2, hour 1 here on Holding Court on WLAF, AM and FM, and 1450WLAF.com. Big doings this week in the city of Memphis and a little bit of controversy. To discuss that, we bring in our source in Memphis, our friend Isaac Simpson. Isaac, how are you today?
I'm good. How you doing, Keith?
Oh, doing fantastic, Isaac. Question immediately. Fallout from the rumble in Madison Square Garden the other night.
Yeah, interesting situation. The Grizzlies really had their way with the Knicks. I think a couple of guys for the Knicks, Dennis Smith Jr. and Alfred Payton, were kind of chippy the entire game. There were kind of some things going on. The push on Marco Guduric earlier in the game. I think Ja went up for a dunk, and I think Alfred Payton pushed him. I think it was Dennis Smith that actually pushed him. So tempers were kind of flaring throughout the game, and the game was out of hand. Grizzlies up 18, of course, late. 50 seconds left. Jay Crowder steals the inbound pass and steps back to attempt a three-pointer, and Alfred Payton just kind of came over and just shoved him into the front row. So kind of a wild scene there in Madison Square Garden on Wednesday night.
The first question, there's several questions that come out of this that I want to run by you, but my first one is, exactly what did Jay Crowder do to get fined $25,000?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's you get pushed out of bounds, and I guess he got up aggressively and kind of was trying to go after him. But I mean, the way I look at it is, if someone you're defending yourself, I don't think you should get fined or anything. I mean, the guy had a right to. I mean, he kind of hopped up and was kind of in his face, but I don't agree with that at all. Also, you look at the fact that Alfred Payton gets a 1-game suspension, and you have Jaren Jackson Jr. and Marco Guduric, who they did leave the bench. Now, the letter of the law is that if you leave the bench, you do get a 1-game suspension, but they never came out to the melee. They kind of stayed near the basket, took a few steps off the bench, and that was it. And they end up getting the same suspension that Alfred Payton gets, which we are not happy about down here in Memphis, especially with a big game tonight against the New Orleans Pelicans. You would have liked to have been at full strength, so they're really going to miss Jaren Jackson Jr. tonight in that game. And, I mean, I think the NBA should kind of dig deeper and look at the situation and not stick so much to the letter of law on that one, because, I mean, you have two guys that didn't even participate at all. They just kind of stepped off the bench a few steps, and then they end up getting suspended 1 game. So that's
Isaac? I think we may have lost Isaac. I think we may have lost our feed there with Isaac. We'll endeavor
Hello?
to.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. Thought we'd lost you there for a second. Question. I guess I've got there, Isaac. Also, how does Marcus Morris avoid a suspension?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty wild as well. I mean, he just a nonchalant shove on John Morant, who wasn't even a part of the situation, and then we all know about his comments after the game. I would have thought for sure he would have gotten 1 game. I mean, especially when you look at the fact that Jaren Jackson and Guduric got suspended 1 game, and Marcus Morris somehow gets out of there with just a fine. I mean, it's weird. I mean, it's tough. It seems like the New York Knicks were kind of the instigators of this, and it seems like the Grizzlies were the one that were hit the hardest about it, especially when the Grizzlies have a game tonight, which is important, and the Knicks are doing what they do, which is pretty much nothing.
And the Knicks really haven't played an important game since Jeff Van Gundy was the coach.
Yeah, so their guys being out, so their guys being out doesn't really hurt them. But yeah, it is strange that Morris end up out of this, especially with his reputation. I'm just kind of surprised that I thought for sure he'd get at least one game out of this.
Big picture, how surprising is it that this Grizzlies team is positioned to have a shot at having a winning record through 50 games?
It's amazing. I mean, coming into this season, I mean, there were some that thought that this could be the worst team in the NBA this year. I mean, they were trying to go lean. They were trying to rebuild, and this was supposed to be a painful year. And I mean, so a lot of stuff went right. They got a lot of luck. I mean, you get to jump up in the lottery, get the number 2 pick. You get Ja Morant, and he's just been an absolute revelation for this team. And you also get Brandon Clark. He's the guy that dropped. They made the trade with the pick that they got from Utah, the Mike Conley trade. They used that trade to move up a couple spots and grab Brandon Clark. And you revisit his history. You look back, Brandon Clark would probably be a top 10 pick in this draft. So you get those two guys, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is really taking a step this year, especially from the perimeter. And you get to mix of veterans, guys like Jay Crowder that we talked about, and Solomon Hill, and a lot of these guys have come in, and they've really clicked together, and it's been fun to watch. I mean, I look around the NBA, and I think this Grizzlies team might be the most exciting team in the NBA, and to think about where they are right now, and these guys are only 19, 20 years old, it's a bright future here in Memphis, and we're excited. I don't think anybody, even the most optimistic Grizz fan, thought that this team would be competing for a playoff spot this year. I mean, this was something that was supposed to take 2 or 3 years, and now I think they really have a good shot of getting that 8th seed, and that would be absolutely amazing for this team and for these young guys to have that experience.
And looking at the race for the 8th seed, with San Antonio still to take their giant rodeo road trip coming up, and Phoenix being Phoenix, is the team they play tonight probably, if they're at full strength, the biggest threat to them, the Pelicans?
Man, even though the Grizzlies are 5 games ahead of them right now, all the computer models have the Pelicans as the favorite to get that 8th seed right now, which is kind of strange. And I think it's going to be tough. I think with the injuries and that they had early in the season, I think they might have dug themselves a little bit too much of a hole. The Grizzlies kind of started off rough as well, but they've really, really bounced back. I think in order for the Pelicans to get that 8th seed, they'd have to go on an absolute tear to get the Grizzlies. Because if the Grizzlies win tonight, I mean, you look at it 6 games back. I mean, that's tough with 30-plus games to play. But, I mean, the Pelicans came in here and really put it on the Grizzlies on MLK Day. Tonight is a big game, and you hate, again, that you don't have Jaren Jackson Jr. for this one. But they still have 2 more matchups in that series coming up later in the season. So it's going to be interesting to play out. But I do think, talent-wise, I do think the Pelicans probably would be the biggest threat, but I think they might have just dug themselves too big of a hole right now. And you talk about the rodeo road trip. I've kind of broke down the schedules of all the teams that are kind of in the mix. They all have pretty tough schedules. I think the Grizzlies actually have the toughest on the road home splits. They have more road games left than any of the teams, but San Antonio has a really tough schedule as well. That rodeo road trip, not only are they playing on the road, they're playing some pretty good teams on that trip as well. So it's going to be interesting down the stretch to watch these teams fight it out. But when holistically, I think the Grizzlies have the best shot to pull this thing out, especially sitting at where they're sitting at right now.
Jumping over to the college game, did Memphis save their season the other night at Central Florida?
Yeah, I think so. And a unlikely hero in Lance Thomas, a guy who came in shooting 1 of 16 from 3, and I was early in the game. He just jacking up shots, and I'm tweeting. I'm like, why is Lance Thomas shooting every time he touched the ball? And maybe I pissed him off. Maybe he read my tweet because he went on an absolute tear, man. Finished 4 of 6 from 3 in a game and 20 points, and really kind of carried that team. And because I mean, you look at outside of Preston Achua, Lance, and Boogie Ellis, they really didn't get anything else from anybody else. DJ Jeffries, Alex Lomax, Lester Quiones, none of these guys, I think they combined gone for like 4 points in the game. So it was basically 3 guys, and I think Lance Thomas really saved this team's season. If they had lost that game at Central Florida, I think your NCAA tournament hopes are probably circled the drain. So it's a big victory. I mean, they have a lot of problems right now. Offensively, they just outside of they really can't execute in the half court. If they're not getting up and down, getting steals, they really struggle to score. I mean, Penny is switching the lineup game in and game out, trying to find something that works. So they're searching right now, and they're in a position where you look at this remaining schedule, they have 2 games with Houston and Wichita State at home. They probably have to go at least 2-1 in those 3 games, and they probably can't afford to lose to anybody else in the conference. Or they're probably looking at a situation to where they're going to win the American tournament in order to get into the NCAA tournament, and that's definitely not something that we thought would even be in the realm coming into the season. So it's a pretty precarious situation for the Memphis Tigers right now. But again, I think their tournament hopes were saved, at least for the time being, with that victory over Central Florida.
Is part of it, Isaac, that people trying to prognosticate in the preseason overlook the fact that this team has next to no real upperclassmen veteran presence?
Yeah, I mean, I think you looked at that freshman class, and I think there was so much hype. You have James Wiseman with the number 1 player in the country, and I think a lot of people kind of overlooked that. I mean, number 1, you have a second-year head coach as well, so he's still learning. And then the only experienced guys you bring back are Alex Lomax, Tyler Harris, and Isaiah Maurice. And Isaiah Maurice is kind of a bit player. He's the only senior on the team, so he's not going to really give you a lot. And you have a small guard in Tyler Harris and Alo, guys that's just coming back from the sophomore. They're still trying to figure themselves out as well. So when you're playing that many freshmen, it's tough, and especially when you have a young coaching staff that's trying to learn on the fly as well. And I think that was kind of something that was kind of overlooked down here in Memphis. I think they saw the talent of the recruiting class and thought that they would just be able to out-talent people. And I think we've seen over the years that doesn't always work out. I mean, you look at Duke last year and the players that they had, and they didn't make it all the way. They probably should have made it for they were 1 point away from losing to Central Florida. So we've always seen that talent doesn't always win out. And I think it's a lot to be said for having upperclassmen and having an experience, because these guys have not looked like the guys that they were supposed to so far. I think James Wiseman would have fixed a lot of that, but I think they still would have had some issues. So I definitely think that's something that was kind of overlooked going into the season.
Looking at the race in the American, how big a surprise is Tulsa?
I think huge. I mean, you shout out to Frank Haif and the job that he's done up there with that Tulsa team, because I don't think anybody saw this coming. I mean, Memphis went up there and got their doors blown off, 40-point loss to Tulsa, and Tulsa's looking pretty good right now. I think they have a shot at the NCAA tournament, and coming into the season, they weren't even on the radar of that. So I think Frank Haif has done a good job. They have some upperclassmen, a lot of size on that team, and they kind of play bully ball a little bit, really bullied Memphis, and I mean, they're in a good spot right now, and I think if they can put a few more wins together, I think they'll have a shot to get in the NCAA tournament. You look at the American right now, and it's really looking like possibly only a 2 or 3 bid league, which is it's crazy. I mean, you expect to get 4 or 5 in out of the American, but I don't think that's going to be the case this year. And right now, I know some prognosticators still have Memphis in there, but just looking at their schedule and what they're going to have to do to stay on that bubble, it's going to be tough. I would probably honestly have Memphis on the outside looking in as of today. I think they have some work to do. Again, you got a big game coming up tomorrow against UConn, but you got 2 games against Houston and a game against Wichita State. They're to finish the season. They're Wichita State here in Memphis and at Houston on the road. Those are going to be 2 huge games. And again, I think they need to go 2-1 in those games to have any shot at large.
If the Americans going to get more than 3, they need either Cincinnati or Memphis or both to get hot, don't they?
Yeah, because I think both teams right now, I mean, they have some decent victories on schedule, but they also have some bad losses. And Memphis and Cincinnati were 2 teams that you expected coming into the season would be right up there at the top of the conference, and it just has not been that. I mean, you got Tulsa, which you didn't expect to be there. Wichita State's been people thought they'd be good coming to the season, but I think they've been a little bit better than advertised, and Houston struggled early, but they've come on. I think Houston and Wichita State has kind of solidified themselves at the top of the conference, and after that, I think you have a lot of question marks with teams like Memphis and Cincinnati trying to figure out, can they find a way to get an at-large bid, or will they be in a situation again to where they have to go out to Fort Worth and win the tournament to get in. So it's going to be interesting down the stretch. There's a lot of high-level, important basketball to be played by teams like Memphis and Cincinnati coming up in American in the next couple months.
Isaac, as always, appreciate you taking some time out of a busy schedule to talk with us. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Man, sure thing, man. You can find me on Twitter at Isaac_Rivals. That's ISAAC_Rivals. You can also go over to TigerSportsReport.com and check out all our great stuff over there. We always got great content coming out, and go out there and check it out. And again, man, Keith, always enjoy being on with you, man. Talk to you next time.
Okay, talk to you soon. Have a great weekend.
You too.
That is Isaac Simpson, and that is segment 2 in the books today on Holding Court on WLAF AM and FM. Back after this.
Now's the best time of year to get more for your money on a new Mahindra. Enjoy 0% interest or save thousands of dollars on a rugged Mahindra tractor. That's more for less on many of Mahindra's best-selling models with tractors that deliver more lift capacity, fuel efficiency, and built-in weight. Save more on Mahindra today.
Quality Outdoor Equipment is your home for Mahindra, Indian Mountain Circle, Jacksboro. Stop in today and see Ed, Trina, Mike, and their crew at Mahindra. Quality Outdoor Equipment, locally owned and operated.
0% APR financing available for a limited time only. See us or go to MahindraUSA.com for more information.
If you are covered by Medicare and TennCare, you have the opportunity to select a Special Needs Advantage plan. These plans have 0 premium, no copays for doctor or hospital visits, and the lowest cost drug copays. All 4 of our health insurance providers have these plans, but you say you already have these benefits under Medicare and TennCare. So why consider adding a Special Needs Advantage plan? Because not only will your current benefits be expanded, you will receive additional benefits. Here's what else: a larger selection of physicians, broader drug coverage, full dental coverage up to $5,000 a year, hearing aid coverage, $350 a year for eyewear, silver sneaker gym membership, and 100 trips a year you can schedule to see your physician, hospital, or pharmacy. You can sign up for these plans, and you can also change from your current plan anytime during the year. It makes sense to find out about this additional coverage to further expand your benefits. My name is Hugh Neal, and I'm an agent with Hare & Cannell. I have been helping individuals in the area for more than 5 years out of our office at the Riggs Center in La Follette. I'm in the office from 9 until 4 every Tuesday and Friday. I am licensed with the 5 major health companies that provide Advantage plans in this area. I'm also licensed with a dozen companies that provide supplement or Medigap plans. Weighing your options is critical in choosing a plan. I can help you find the plan that meets your needs. Please drop by my office in the Riggs Center here in La Follette and see me, Hugh Neal, on Tuesdays and Fridays. It is better to look before you leap.
This is Holding Court with Keith Hatfield on WLAF.
And we are back. Final segment, hour 1 here on WLAF AM and FM and 1450WLAF.com. Keith Hatfield here. The show is Holding Court. And we jump on now to talk a little college hoops, and we bring in ball great Mark Griffin. Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, Keith?
I'm doing well. First things first, let's discuss the current state of Tennessee basketball. Tuesday night, probably not going to be part of the highlight reel for this season.
No, it's one of those games that you just want to forget about, but you've got to reflect and see where there's areas of improvement. And it really, I think it really hurt. And I know you guys have probably talked about this ad nauseum, but that's a game you just had to have if you've got a good shot to go to NCAA. Now you're just, you're praying that other teams lose and that you get to the championship in the SEC. And I'm looking that far now because I had that down as a victory.
Oh, I think most people did. That was a game against a team that has struggled most of the year, but Tennessee. It shows the danger, regardless of what talent level you have as a team. If you let the opposing side dictate tempo, especially in modern college basketball, as small margin for error as everyone has, you're going to be in a battle if you allow the other team to dictate kind of the terms of engagement.
No, you're right. And if you don't put a butt on somebody and block out, I mean, they gave up, I believe, 23 offensive rebounds, and that's just a head shaker, and that's effort.
I mean, there's any way around. You can't get around that. And I love the balls, but I'm going to call spade a spade. If you don't rebound, that is lack of effort and lack of positioning. 80% of free throw, of shots, they say, go long. So if you can get a butt on somebody, then you're going to get the ball. And they did not. And what's interesting, reflecting on Texas A&M, is Nebo, their leading scorer, they held to 4 points. I mean, they did what they needed to do in many areas. I mean, they had 10 blocks, 4 guys in double figures. They held Texas A&M to 27% three-point shooting and 30% from the field goal. That's a 20-point blowout, other than the offensive rebounds, and also Texas A&M doing a fantastic job of hitting the free throws in the second half.
Well, and this is something we talked about earlier on the show, Mark, that is bizarre to me. If you're putting forth the effort to hold someone to 30%, I don't understand how you allow yourself to negate that by not putting forth the effort to finish the possession by corralling defensive rebounds.
I look at it just effort. I mean, and there's really no excuse. And I know the staff was sharing that with each other and with the players. Look, this is effort. They're going to show that film, and it's going to hurt their stomachs. And they're going to see a lot of opportunities that were lost that could have turned the game around for a victory at home. But it also goes to show all the listeners and fans that you cannot take for granted a home game. Now, it's hard. It's really hard to win on the road, but you sure can't take home for granted. And I just think they took it for granted.
Mark, certainly having been in the locker room and been in these situations, looking at it now, how imperative is it that the veterans, now granted this team doesn't have that huge a veteran presence, how important is it for them to get everyone regrouped? Because now, for this team to make postseason play, and I'm not even just talking about the NCAA tournament, I'm talking about the NIT as well. This team's going to have to beat some people that they're probably not going to be expected to beat.
No, you're right, and talking about the upperclassmen, I want to know who have you defined as the team's leader? I don't know right now. I can't single out that person to say this is the leader. Is it Bowden? Is it Pons? Is it Fulke? How are they leading? Who's the most vocal? I want Jordan Bowden to be the leader of this team, but Keith, I just don't see it. Now, you can still be a leader and have an off night, because you can make up with it in other areas. You can play defense. You can communicate. I don't know who the leader is, and that bothers me.
Is that where the loss of Lamonte Turner, who is obviously the vocal leader of the team, is that where his loss is felt even maybe more so than his production on the floor?
I totally think that is the case, and plus Lamonte was the best defensive player on the team, in my opinion. So you lose that side as well. Someone that's gutsy, gets in, great stance on the defensive end, and players, I think, thrive off of how well he played. And not to make an excuse at all, because, Turner's gone, we get that. But someone has got to step up. They use the term a lot in football, next man up. It's the same thing in every sport, next person up. Someone has to step up. And I'm just wondering who is going to be that individual from here on out, starting against Mississippi State, that's going to take these guys by the throats and say, look, we're going to outplay these guys. No one's going to come in here. No one's going to play against us and out-hustle us. That's just non-excusable.
And I guess from a standpoint of trying to figure out if you've been able to rectify the issues, facing Reggie Perry and the rest of that Mississippi State front line, if Tennessee's going to have the same rebounding problems Saturday, they may not get a rebound.
And they may not. Mississippi State is fourth in the conference right now in rebounding at over 38. 139 boards a game. And then you're going up against a surefire NBA player in Reggie Perry, which he should leave after this year. I don't know what you're hearing, but he should be gone. 6'10", 250, hardly any body fat. And then you've got a Koo or a Ko. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. The kid from Hamilton Heights, is a good shot blocker and rebounder as well. So you've got beef that you're going to have to put a butt on.
And and Starkville's never an easy place to play when they're halfway decent, and they've now, especially with the win at Florida, they're positioning themselves to have a chance to make the NCAA tournament.
They really have positioned themselves, and I looked up the other day of their losses, and their margin of loss is average is around 7 points, but I think 4 of them were 2 points or less or 3 points or less. So it was really close losses that they had. So they're right there. I think they just had one blowout game, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go back and look. But nonetheless, they're trending in the right direction, and UT's trending in the opposite direction. Now, once again, tip-off, everything changes. It's going to come down, I think, to getting Perry into foul trouble, getting him out of his game. Fulkerson's going to have to really step up, and Pons, whoever guards Perry, if they're switching back and forth, or if they decide to go to a zone. It'll be interesting to see how they do play this Mississippi State team, because Keith, they've got some athletes other than Perry, and like you said, at home they're getting good crowds. It's a tough place to play. They're hungry. I mean, they got a really good coach that's had experience postseason. So I'm really looking forward to this game and seeing how Tennessee comes out and plays.
Jumping over to college basketball at large, something you and I bounced back and forth yesterday. It's almost a little refreshing not to see the same 7 or 8 names at the top of the board this year, isn't it?
Oh man, I'm watching. I'm excited to get on. To get on the couch and watch San Diego State of all teams and cheering for them. And I know nothing about their program other than their coach and Yanni Wetzel, who was an average at best basketball player here at Vanderbilt, where I'm sitting right now at Vanderbilt. And then to see him thrive under a new coach and new environment, and having 7 number 1 teams over the course of the season. There's not one dominant team. It's really going to be exciting to see who peaks at the right time, and it can be many different teams. But you're right. You and I picked out several teams that they're head scratchers. I mean, Dayton of all people. Of course, they have the Obi kid that's, I think it's Toppin. That's going to be a first round draft pick and a lottery pick. But you got to have more than that. And they have juniors and they have upperclassmen that are playing really well together. Jalen Crutcher and others. You're looking at, and I'm not saying Penn State's going to go to the Sweet 16, but I mean, I don't know when Penn State's been good. I mean, and you can name other programs
in the
as well.
Early 90s.
Oh gosh, that's right. And then Rutgers. I mean, when's Rutgers been to the tournament? I mean, it's been years, and I'm sitting there cheering for the underdog. So it's kind of nice to see these guys, fare well.
Well, what are the teams there, and see if maybe I'm the only person who sees this comparison. I see, because I follow the Big 12 fairly close, and I see Baylor on a regular basis. They remind me a lot of the Gene Cady teams at Purdue over the years. And I think they're going to win a bunch of regular season games. They play incredibly hard. They're very well disciplined. But my guess is they're going to run into somebody that just out-talents them, probably in the round of 16 or so.
You know what? It's interesting. I don't have them winning the championship. I haven't gone that far yet, but I totally agree with you. It's a team that's going to go in. They're going to be a 1 seed as of now anyway. But it's just going to be so exciting to see who steps up, who makes a name for themselves, and I always. And you and I have talked about this. I think it comes back to guards. What guards are really going to step up and knock down big shots and take care of the ball during the tournament, because it really does turn into a guard, I think, led team. And I'm starting to look now when I'm watching these teams to see who has good guards. And I know people are going to poo-poo on San Diego State, but I was really impressed the 4 or 5 games that I've watched them, how their guards play and how inspired they are as far as talking about effort earlier. These guys just go full steam, and their body language is great. And I don't think they're the type of team that's saying, "Hey, it's going to be good for us to get a loss, and we'll be motivated by a loss." I don't think you get motivated by a loss. Losing the game to say, "Hey, this was good for us." I mean, I think they truly could go into the tournament undefeated. Another team that I really like is Gonzaga.
Oh, yes. I mean, but again, Killian Tilly last night injures his ankle again, and
There you go.
Mark Few is well on his way to taking away the title of least lucky coach in the postseason from Bob Huggins.
Oh gosh, you're right. But a great program, great coach. But then you see they're not tested during this, during the regular season. I don't know how much that really does affect them going into the tournament, because when you don't play a great regular season schedule, being a former student athlete, that goes through your head. One thing I always gain coming out of the SEC, it's like we played SEC ball. We played athletes. Now we might not have played, big, broad-shouldered men that you may see in the Big Ten, because they're more of a powerful conference, just like in football. But you knew when you were in the SEC or when you got to the NCAA tournament, or NIT in our case, that you faced the great athletes. Now, looking at Gonzaga, I still think when they step into the tournament, they're looking at programs going, man, they're out athleting us. How are we going to make up for that? And I think that does work on their psyche.
Jumping over to the SEC real quick, is LSU actually going to win this thing again?
They've done such a great job closing out games. I think they are. And they're winning on the road. I love Skylar Mays. He's probably my favorite player in the conference. Silva last year at South Carolina was my favorite player for many years because of the abuse he put up with Frank Martin.
Our boy Silva.
Where it got him.
Our boy Silva now with an NBA contract with the Heat.
There you go. So it's paid off, and he always said kind things about Coach Martin, even if he didn't believe him or truly believe him. But at least he was good in front of press, and it's definitely paid off because look, you're right, it made him a pro. And he probably beat out Kyle Alexander for that final spot as well. But I love Skylar Mays. He's just such a competitor. Man, he'd be a guy that would be one of the first guys I would pick on my team if I'm choosing guys from the SEC for sure.
Probably, I would assume it's probably safe to say the team most equipped to chase LSU will be the winner of the Kentucky-Auburn game tomorrow.
Yeah, and where is that game? Is that at Auburn?
It is at Auburn.
The thing about Auburn, and I know y'all probably talked about this. I like Coach Pearl's base team, but I'm a little concerned if they don't knock down threes, they lose, and it's such a, I think, a bad strategy to rely on 3-point field goals to win games. Now, Wiley is an excellent player. I don't know why they don't go into Wiley more, but I'm over here at Vanderbilt working, and Coach Pearl's over there coaching. But I really like Wiley and the inside presence. I just wish they would go into him a little bit more because I think he could really dominate. But maybe they'll make changes moving forward as well. But I do like Auburn's chances, but right now I'm going with LSU as number one. And I feel good about Auburn at home against Kentucky.
Maybe it's just me, but Kentucky just appears to be a work in progress. And the more I watch of them, especially the first half they threw out there against Vanderbilt the other night, I begin to wonder if that work's ever going to get far along enough in progress for them to be a real factor come March.
No, you make a great point, Keith, because that's what they're known for now is, the freshman development. When it comes springtime, everything clicks. Well, right now it's not clicking with too many players. I mean, the big kid, Nick Richards, I think he's exceeded my expectations. I don't know about yours, but I haven't seen the consistency, and his has been lately, but I haven't seen the consistency with other players as a team. Now, you'll see one guy play exceptionally well one game and one guy play exceptionally well another game, but you really haven't seen them click as a team, and that makes me wonder, is there anything going on with the chemistry? Are guys out just trying to get theirs, or do they really do feel strong about the team concept and trying to win a championship, or they just saying, hey, where's my draft stock? I don't know.
Right. Final question, Mark. On a scale of 1 to 10 for postseason hopes, how imperative is it that Tennessee win either tomorrow in Starkville or next week in Tuscaloosa?
Oh, God. Well, I'm going to give it the first number that jumps to my mind is a 9. I think if you've got to win one at least one. I mean, I'm surprised you didn't pose it. Do you think they need to win both?
Right.
I mean, they're going to be road trips.
Well, they've got to get the game. They've got to get the A&M game back somewhere.
They do. They've got to gain it back, and that's going to be the motivation, I think, that the coaching staff's going to put on this team is, look, let's win one back. Okay, we lost at home, but we've got to go out and win on the road. We've shown we can compete on the road. We've got to continue to compete, and let's get this done, and let's get some butts on bodies, and get us a win, and then move on to Kentucky next Saturday. But they should not be thinking about Kentucky at all or Alabama. It should just be really honing in on Mississippi State and what they can do to take advantage of Mississippi State's weaknesses.
Mark, always appreciate you taking some time to talk with us. Have a great weekend, my friend.
Hey, my pleasure. Anytime. Go Vols.
All right. That is Mark Griffin. Want to give a shout-out to our good friend Clyde down at BC Bonding. If you have any bonding needs in the 8th Judicial District, that's 423-563-0065. That is 423-563-0065. Back after this.
Dr. Dan's new clinic is now open. La Follette Family Clinic and Pediatrics is now open on the 4-lane highway in La Follette, 2425 Jacksboro Pike, right beside Grace Rehab. Dr. Dan and staff want to let everyone know that they're accepting new patients, all insurance, and offer a sliding fee scale. And they're treating all ages of patients. 2 new nurse practitioners also join the staff, Carrie Mead and Jenny Carter. Dr. Dan's been serving Campbell County for more than 20 years, and he welcomes you to his new clinic, La Follette Family Clinic and Pediatrics, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. For an appointment, call 423-566-4748, 566-4748. The La Follette Family Clinic and Pediatrics is now open in its new location.
Income tax time is coming up. Hello, good folks of Campbell County. Good to talk with y'all again. This is JR at JR's Tires down here in La Follette, Tennessee, 811 Jacksboro Pike. We also have a store down in Caryville on John McGee Boulevard. We got wheels in stock, $50 off of what we have in stock on a set. We've got all kinds of mud grips for those that go into the mountain area that needs just a little bite, or the farmer today. We've got 235-15 mud and snows for $125, 31-10-50s for $135, 265-75-16s for $150, 265-70-17 for $150.
This is Jaylyn at JR's Tires. Papa actually forgot to mention about our cars down here. We have some 4-wheel drive vehicles that you need to come check out, and we have some great deals on some low-profile cars that you need to come check out today. Come see me, Jaylyn Kitts, at 811 Jacksboro Pike. JR's Tires of La Follette.
It's 20s all the way around at your locally owned and operated family fitness center. Top Fitness. It's the 2020 $20 special. For 2020, simply sign a 1-year contract and it's only $20 a month. Top Fitness also features men and women's basic self-defense classes. The cost is $10 per class or only $5 a class for Top Fitness members. Tan with Top Fitness. Tanning is even free with select membership packages. And there's always free Wi-Fi at Top Fitness. Join now by calling 423-352-6006, 352-6006. Top Fitness is your 24/7, 365 family fitness center. Top Fitness in the Whiteway Plaza in La Follette. Tax not included. Certain restrictions apply. Here are the sign-up times when there's someone in the office at Top Fitness, Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. until noon. Monday through Thursday, 5:30 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. Fridays, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Sundays, 8 a.m. until noon.
Whether he's on the court, in court, or holding court, he's ready to talk sports. You're listening to Holding Court with Keith Hatfield on WLAF.
And we are back. Hour 2 underway on Holding Court. Huge game in the Southern Conference this weekend. And to discuss that, we bring in our friend, ETSU head coach Steve Forbes. Coach, how are you?
Well, I'm doing okay. I've been better. We got our tails whipped on Wednesday night here at home, so put a little heat on us for Saturday.
You certainly ran into an example of sometimes you run into a buzzsaw, and right now Samford about as hot a team as there is in the Southern Conference.
You mean Mercer?
Mercer, I mean.
But that's all right. Yeah, Greg Gary's done a really good job there, and Greg was a long-time assistant for Matt Painter at Purdue, and sometimes it takes a little time to get going, and they're obviously playing really well right now, won 5 in a row, and I think it's a testament probably to the depth of our league this year. Last year we were pretty top-heavy with the top 4 teams not losing any games to the rest of the league, and now we have the same top 4 teams, Greensboro, us, Furman, Wofford, but add Chattanooga's better, Western Carolina's better, Mercer's better, Sanford's got talent, and BMI took Furman to overtime at Furman on the road on Wednesday. So there's a lot of depth in our league this year.
Is that a natural byproduct of the top of the league being as good as it has been lately, and especially last year, that other teams have to either raise their level and increase their commitment to basketball or just get buried?
I think so. I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think, when we came, since I've been here, and this is my 5th season, the league's gotten better and better and better. And, Wofford had run the league a little bit before we got in the league, but in the last 5 years, really truthfully, it's been us in Greensboro in the conference championship more often than not. We've been in it 3 times, Greensboro 3 times, Chattanooga once, and Wofford once. And so, and I think the other teams have, changed. Mercer got a new coach this year. He's doing a great job. Last year, Mark Prosser, Skip Prosser's son, got the Western Carolina job. He's doing a good job. Coach Paris is continuing to build Chattanooga. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a product of us, of the top 4 teams doing well.
The events of this week now, obviously, in the past, how huge a game is tomorrow, and how big a crowd are you expecting?
Well, it's a big game because we're in the final. We've finally halfway through the league, so this is the final turn, and to have any chance to win the league, I don't think we can lose any more home games. I didn't think we could lose any in the first place, and to lose in Mercer, that's a big hit. So, as far as league play is concerned, it's a big game, and I would be surprised if it wasn't sold out. We had over 6,000 in here last Saturday for Chattanooga, and that this game carries a little bit more magnitude than that one. Even though Chattanooga's a rivalry game, I would be really surprised if this game wasn't a sellout.
And that's at the end of the day, that is one of the signs of what you've been able to build and the overall health of the program, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the support has been outstanding, and I think it was always here. It kind of come and go at times, throughout the years, kind of like any program. I think Tennessee could probably say the same thing, and before Bruce got there were curtains up in the upper deck. Now you wouldn't even think about doing something like that. Here, they've come and then they've gone away, and that was just a matter of igniting the community, igniting the program again, and we've done that, and we've led the league in attendance the last 4 straight years, and probably will again this year.
And those curtains had been up so long they had layers of dust on them.
Well, I never saw them because I didn't come in the first year, and I was there the second year, but I always heard about them, and I do remember this. I remember thinking, Pearl tried to hire me when he initially got the job, and I just got to Texas A&M, and I just didn't want to leave. I didn't really truthfully want to go through. That would have been my 3rd straight year 1 in a program, and those are always the hardest. And I remember thinking that's such a big building. I never really had followed Tennessee basketball, but I remember, I don't know, it was like a Super Tuesday game or something. I was home, and we weren't playing A&M, and I flipped on, and I think Tennessee was playing Kentucky at home or somebody, and it was sold out. And I was like, oh, my God, I just didn't think he could do it that fast with that many people, but the people sure caught on fast.
Looking at your team right now, Coach, what's the one thing you want to tighten up as you hit the stretch in the Southern Conference?
I mean, I think we got to continue to defend, and we've done it for the most part. We've really improved our three-point defense from last year. So I think that's something that's got to stay steady. Where we've been inconsistent is scoring the basketball, and that really hurt us on Wednesday night. We're 3 for 22 from 3. We have too many good shooters to do that. And so I think we have to tighten up our offense and score the ball. And one of the advantages, and probably the great thing about my team this year, we've had 8 different leading scorers this year. And I don't know if there's hardly any 2 or 3 teams in the country that could say that. And so we don't have to rely on just 1, 2, 3 people, but we do need people stepping up. And the other night, Bo Hodges, who's one of the premier players in our league, was getting double teamed, and my 7-foot center, Lucas Casson, who transferred from Oklahoma State, he was getting double teamed, and they were kicking it out and to wide open guys, and they got to step up and make them, and we just haven't been doing that.
Is that one of those things in sports that's essentially contagious? That if one guy hits a couple, a lot of times everybody else will follow suit.
It seems to be that way. It's kind of like, you get the yips in golf, or it's just your pitchers all of a sudden can't throw strikes, and then it's contagious, and I don't know why. It's odd, because one of the things that we've always done is give our kids confidence to play on offense, and so I don't really talk a whole lot about it. I try not to make a big issue out of it, but it's become an issue that we have to make some shots, and it puts way too much pressure on your defense when you can't score.
Is it a situation where if you make too big a deal of it, you possibly even make it worse?
I've always believed that. Now, some coaches may disagree with me on that. I don't know. I've always kind of been that way. I've always believed in, recruiting offense, coaching defense, and giving the kids freedom on offense to play, and then, holding them highly accountable on defense. And so I've never rarely been through this on offense with the team, but it seems to be a little contagious right now, and we're trying to get out of it.
Talking offense, for multiple years now, we've had a lot of talk about an increased emphasis on allowing freedom of movement of players to try to open up the lane and open up scoring. Do you think that an officiating initiative has had any meaningful effect on the game at all?
Not really. I mean, I think there's been some times, it's interesting. At the beginning of the year, the game's always called pretty tight and to the rules, and then as you get into league play, it seems to relax, and then it goes back the opposite when you get in the tournament. They start blowing a tight whistle and calling it the way it says in the rule book, because those guys want to advance in the tournament, the refs. So consistently, no, I don't really think so. And I think part of it is what we just talked about. I think with the 3-point line moving back, players haven't got to where they're proficient, and teams haven't become proficient in making the 3-point shot consistently. And so if that's the case, the defense is not going to extend. The defense is going to compact. And when you do that, it's not going to be a pretty game. And I think the other thing too is with the ball screen, there's really not that much movement as there used to be when a lot of teams ran motion and moved the ball side to side. You see a lot of dribbling, and so that kind of, I think, tends to lead to more fouling a little bit too.
Am I the only person out there that thinks if someone started running a true Indiana style motion offense now, that most teams would have no idea how to defend it?
Well, yeah, because I've seen it. I was in the league with Bobby Knight when I was at Texas A&M, and then I was in the league with Marty Simmons. Marty played for the great Ron Felling at Lawrenceville High School back in the 80s, won 2 state championships, and then played in Indiana for Coach Knight, and then I went on to play at Evansville for one of Coach Knight's assistants.
Jim Cruz.
Jim Cruz. Marty ran. Yeah, that's right, Jim Cruz. Marty ran true motion, and it was very difficult, even with the great teams we had at Wichita State, to play them. And basically, we had to press them, and try to out-athlete them, take them out of their offense, because we had such a difficult time guarding them in the half court. And we've done the motion this year. It's not as good as Marty Simmons or anything like that, but we've tried to open up the court, move the ball, spread it out, move it side to side, play off closeouts, play off screens, and play off the post. And so I think it's a fun way to play, and I think it's the right way to play.
Are the restrictions on practice time one of the reasons more people don't try to institute that, Coach?
I don't think so. I think we've got plenty of time. I think it's probably the amount of transfers and the amount of new guys you're getting every year. Motion is something that takes time, and motion takes maybe 2-3 years. Those things take time to develop and get to. It's kind of like I suppose a relationship with a quarterback and a wide receiver. It takes time to understand each other, and I think that's probably more so than anything is just the amount of changeover every year in your roster, it's hard to do. That's probably why I stayed away from it forever, was because I didn't feel comfortable teaching it to new people every year. And but I felt like this year was a good year to do it, and I think it's paid off for us.
And you mentioned that, and I guess probably a bigger point there is that the reason the game is kind of becoming a little bit homogenous, that watching one team play doesn't look as nearly as different as it used to? I mean, used to you'd see Loyola Marymount play one night.
You do see a lot of the same. Yeah, you see a lot of the same. You know, you see a lot of, like I said, you see a lot of ball screen. You know, you see a lot of the ball being dominated off the dribble. There's no, I mean, there's time for that, no question. You have to be able to do it, but I think it'd be nice. You know, it's nice to share the ball and move it and let everybody have some fun playing. And I do think that you probably have seen more and more teams go to that. Now, you know, will that change? It probably will in time. Who knows? You know, the one thing about running motion, in my opinion, it makes your defense better, because you have to guard unpredictable movement and cuts and screens. Whereas when you're defending every day in practice against the dribble or against sets, you tend to get lazy. You tend to understand what the play is, and you kind of just stand there and you lock in. Where in motion, you can't do that.
I got up on my Twitter soapbox yesterday, and I know you may be limited in what you can say on this issue, but doesn't the Southern Conference have to get a better television deal?
Oh, for sure. We know it. Those things, as you know, are long-term deals. They're done long before. Most of us were probably in this league, and our new commissioner. I really like our new commissioner, Jim Schaus. His dad was Fred Schaus, you know, that coached the Lakers, coached West Virginia. He was the AD that hired Coach Craig Marshall at Wichita State. He came from Ohio University. He's on it. He's working on it, but I don't know how attractive we are, you know, now that with the way things have changed. You know, things have changed a lot since those contracts were put in place. And you're right. I mean, I don't know disrespect to the OVC or the Horizon or any of those other leagues that you see on Thursday night, Friday night. You know, we definitely should be on. I mean, we have some really, really good teams in our league, and you know, how that happens from here down the road, I don't know. I think our ESPN contract has one more year, but we don't have any television with it. It's just but the ESPN3 is nice. ESPN, that stuff is good. Plus, I mean, all of our kids' families get to see us, you know, their kids play, and I think those are good things. But we need to be on television now. If that's ESPN or CBS Sports Network or whatever it is, I think in the future that's something that we definitely need to get on.
Well, and certainly not beating up on any of these programs. I certainly have infinite respect for Belmont, but when I turn on my television, I see Belmont at Tennessee Tech and Presbyterian at South Carolina Upstate. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they ought to be able to find a spot for UNC Greensboro at East Tennessee State.
Oh, without doubt. You know, there's some, you know, really good games that are going to be played this month and aren't going to get seen. And you know, it's a shame, but you know, it's no disrespect to those teams. Their leagues were smart enough or somehow got those contracts, and we don't have them. And one of the things I push for, actually, we went to a Wednesday Saturday schedule this year. We were Thursday Saturday, but I wanted to play Friday Sunday for two reasons. One, I thought we'd get outstanding television coverage on Friday and Sunday, not going up against anybody. Number two, I thought we'd get outstanding referees because, again, we're not going up against the major conferences, you know. So most of the referees that came to work the SEC or the ACC, because that's the footprint that we're in, can work our game on a Friday night and go work a game on Saturday and then stay and work a game on Sunday. And then I think television, there's not much to show on Friday night, and some on Sunday, but not a ton. But nobody wanted to go to that, so we went to Wednesday, Saturday.
Now, one thing that came out of last week's show, now I've got to say, one of your decisions was vindicated. Austin Peay coach Matt Figger was on with us and discussed his trip to West Virginia this year, and he agrees with your decision not to accept Huggs' invitation wholeheartedly.
Well, you know, Matt's from Butcher Holler. He grew up with Dew and Loretta, you know, and so he's not the sharpest tool in the shed now when it comes to scheduling. And so, Fig and I have been friends probably, 25 years at least. We started out in the JUCOs together. He signed the famous Sean Marion and Tyrone Nesby at Vincennes. They had some great teams, and he's done an unbelievable job there at Austin Peay. But he's got that Frank Martin in him, and that he's got that loyalty to Hugs, and I got loyalty to Hugs, but I'm not going to be that loyal to go play him. I can tell you that right now.
Hey, from the conversation with Matt last week, I think that loyalty that's going to be a one-off, though. I don't think he's taking the invitation again.
Well, we scrimmaged each other for 2 years at Austin Peay, but we ended up turning into a WWF wrestling match, and I felt bad for the refs because I don't think they wanted to blow their whistle that much, and so we had a 1 year hiatus this year. We'll have to see if we get back together because every time we do, it seems to be hand-to-hand combat.
Coach, always a pleasure to have you on. Best of luck tomorrow against Greensboro, and best of luck going forward. And we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. That is Coach Steve Forbes of the East Tennessee State Buccaneers. Segment 2 here on Holding Court on WLAF AM and FM and 1450WLAF.com in the books. We'll be back after this.
Are you suffering from allergies? Time to see the A-Team at Cumberland Gap Medical.
The A-Team is led by APRN Amanda Brown and the staff at Cumberland Gap Medical.
If you're ready for relief from allergies such as tree, grass, pollen, and the like, the A-Team is ready with relief for you from those allergies. Allergy shot therapy is the only, most surefire way to relieve allergies. So why drive to Knoxville for allergy testing and allergy shots when the A-Team at Cumberland Gap Medical is right here at home? All it takes is a visit to Cumberland Gap Medical in our new location. We're beside stoplight number 10, where Cumberland crosses East Central Avenue. Stop by and visit us or call us at Cumberland Gap Medical, 423-201-9799.
A certified Food City butcher has a lot on his plate. He cuts, chops, and grinds every day. In fact, about the only thing he's not cutting fresh in-house are corners. Beginning at 6 a.m., he grinds fresh beef all day long and stamps the hour that beef was ground, not the day. So by the time meat from other grocery chains is hitting the shelves, ours is hitting your grill. Now that's value every day, only at Food City.
Hi, this is Percy Schultz from Walk-In Bathtub. Of all the years I've been putting in bathtubs, from the people from the teens with paraplegic to the people up in their 90s, they've all told me the same thing. I want a better life for myself. I want to be able to get in and out of the bathtub without falling. I want to help my overall health with arthritis, sugar diabetes, your knees, your legs, your back, all of that stuff that they're concerned about. I want to give myself a bath. I don't want somebody to give myself a bath. I want my independence. I want to be able to stay at home. I want to be able to take care of myself. I want to be with my family, and I want to be in my home. That's why that I want to buy a walk-in bathtub. Because I know one thing, what good is life if you don't have your health? And if I don't do something about it, who's going to? This is Percy Short. Come by the showroom, take a look at the walk-in bathtub, see what I can do to help you. I'll turn the water on for you. God bless, thanks, have a great day.
You're listening to Campbell County's very own sports talk show, Holding Court. Now, back to your host, Keith Hatfield, over WLAF.
And we are back. Second segment, hour 2 here on Holding Court. And it is our pleasure at this time to bring in the head coach of the Wayne County Cardinals, who you may better know as Tennessee great Rodney Woods. Coach, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Certainly great to have you on. I always like to start the interviews kind of at the start of the book. First question I have is quite simple. How does someone from 4 Mile, Kentucky, by way of Lone Jack High School, end up at the University of Tennessee?
Oh, gee. Well, the first coach to come see me play was A.W. Davis. And then from there, Stu Aberdeen came quite a few times. And then Coach Mears, as a matter of fact, before all the rule changes, when you could go watch players, Tennessee saw me play 17 games in a row. One of their coaches did. So just sitting in the sitting in the living room one night, and my dad looked at me and he said, "I know how bad you want to play at Kentucky, and that's where I want you to play." He said, "But you got to go where you're wanted the most, and these guys want you more than anybody." So that's how I ended up going to Knoxville to play. Of course, I was very familiar with Tennessee. We only got 2 TV stations when I was growing up, and that was Channel 6 and Channel 10 out of Knoxville. So I'd watch tennis. I watched all those replays, that came on at 11 o'clock. I had kept up with them, and actually Knoxville was closer to me than Lexington was. It was only about 70 miles to Knoxville, and then it was about right at 100 to Lexington. So I was very familiar with Tennessee.
So Coach Aberdeen and Coach Mears' reputations as dogged recruiters were well earned.
And when Coach Mears came into my living room and looked at me and told me that he would promise me 2 things. Number 1 was, you'll start every game you're here unless you're hurt. And the second thing was, he said, I know you love to play fast. And, of course, Tennessee had a reputation for playing really slow at that time. And he said, we'll lead the SEC in scoring if you'll come to Tennessee. And I'm pretty sure we led the SEC in scoring all 3 years I played.
And certainly you're a big part of that. You're a big part of that as the trigger man at point guard. And you also had some pretty good teammates in that run.
Yeah, not bad. Of course, Ernie and Bernard were tremendous players, and I think Coach Mears, I don't think he'll ever get the credit he deserves for the type of coach he was and his understanding of the game. I think probably before anyone, even back to, I would say he was a lot like on the offensive end. He understood it like Hubie Brown did. Hubie Brown always said, offense is spacing and spacing is offense, and Coach Mears had an unreal understanding about spacing on the offensive end and just made it so difficult for teams to help out on Ernie and for teams to help double Bernard, the way he spaced the court and his understanding of that. So I think he was, when he probably in the middle of his career, everybody went on and on about his 1-3-1 defense, and all this. I think he was probably a mastermind offensively, and people never realized that.
Do you think one reason that Coach Mears hasn't gotten his due over the years is that he's almost judged by the standards of today, when the NCAA tournament is far easier to make than it was when Coach Mears was coaching? Because for the vast majority of his career, the only way you could make the NCAA tournament was to actually win your conference. Yeah,
and I've talked about that with people many times, Keith. I can't remember exactly. I looked it up at one time. I think he didn't finish below third, but maybe one time in his career there. And he would have made the tournament every single year probably except once. And now, all you hear about these coaches, they've been to the tournament 10 times in a row, and all that stuff. And that guy, I think he would have made it either 12 out of 13 or 13 out of 14. I don't remember, but he certainly deserves to be remembered for what he did there.
And looking, certainly a lot of memorable games in your career at Tennessee, and looking back, noticed one in the short-lived National Commissioners Invitational Tournament. You played the genesis of the Indiana team that went on to go 63-1 over a 2-year period.
Yeah, we lost to them in overtime in St. Louis that year, and I remember it well for a couple reasons. We were down 3 or 4 there late, and we got a couple of big steals and got the game tied, and end up losing right in the overtime. And that was the year that the really good player, slipped me here for a second, son played for North Carolina, was a great
Scott
player.
May.
Yeah. He got hurt. He got hurt that year, and so he was the only one that wasn't with them when we played them. And of course, he was a big part, but they had all those guys. Quinn Buckner had to try to guard that guy, and also Scott Benson and all that bunch were there at the time. So that was a really good game, and it was played in St. Louis Arena. In fact, that was one of the coldest places I've ever been in. We went the night before we played them and watched a hockey game, the St. Louis Blues, and then the next night we played Indiana in the first round of that tournament and lost in overtime to them. And the other thing that was crazy about it, I remember, was the next morning, instead of flying back to Knoxville, Bud Ford put me on a plane to Orlando, Florida, to catch up with a baseball team that was playing. So I went straight from basketball to a baseball game the next day.
Certainly not something that's going to happen in modern college basketball.
No, that doesn't happen anymore. We used to joke around with Condridge Holloway. We used to joke with Rick Honeycutt a bunch about we made all SEC East in baseball. Condridge, myself, and Rick, and we always told Rick that game was easy. We didn't even have to practice and make all conference.
A question about the arrivals of Grunfeld and King. Obviously, Tennessee at that point had established itself as a solid winning program in the SEC. How surprising was it to see two freshmen come in back-to-back years and be able to make that sort of impact?
Well, after they were on campus and playing pickup games, it was pretty obvious what was going to happen. I think a few of my teammates, they weren't quite as impressed. I always talk about one case in particular when Bernard came in. We would play pickup games. Of course, the coaches weren't supposed to organize them or anything, and it's not like now where they could have workouts. I mean, we couldn't have any contact with those guys until October 15th. So once school started, we're in there organizing, and I'm kind of being the leader of the team and the captain and putting things together, and we're playing, 3-4 nights a week in the arena, and coaches aren't supposed to be in there watching. I won't say whether they might have sneaked in up top where nobody could see them or not, but we're in there playing, and Bernard, he's just annihilating everyone. And I remember one of the guys on the team, one of the older guys, he made the statement. He said, "Wait till we play somebody." So we played the first game, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Bernard, I can't remember if it's 41, 42 points, fouls out with about 8 or 9 minutes to go. I remember Coach Mears, when he got his fourth foul, I'm standing over there close to the bench there at a dead ball, and Coach says, "I'm just going to let him play it on out," because we're up about 30, I guess. So he fouls out early in the game. So when the game's over, the same guy says, the same player, he says, "Well, we'll find out what he's made out of Saturday when we go to Michigan." So we go to Michigan and play, and they have C.J. Kupek, Joe Johnson, Steve Grody, and that group ranked in the top 5 in the country. We lose in overtime, and I can't remember, but Bernard had like 38 or 39. Same player looked at me in the locker room when we're getting dressed. He goes, "He's for real." I said, "I've been telling you that since the first day he walked in here. He's different." But and the great thing about all those pickup games, I mean, it was like a fight every night because he and Ernie always played on opposite teams of each other, and boy, it was almost a fist fight every time we played because both those guys were so competitive and hated to lose. They were used to, when I played pickup games in high school, or in between high school and college, we might have there might be 12, 13 guys around playing. So if you got beat, you had to sit out for one game and then you're back in. Where Ernie and Bernard played, when they lost, it might be 2 hours before they got to play again. So those pickup games to them were a bloodbath. They weren't going to lose, and so we had some interesting pickup games to say the least.
Bernard, the best player you ever saw in the SEC?
The best I ever saw. I've always said the 3 best I ever saw were Bernard King, Pete Maravich, and Dan Issel were the 3 best I ever watched.
And certainly, I think if you start a squad with those 3, you've got your point guard, your small forward, and your center. You're well on your way to a pretty good team right there. Coach, you there? Okay. Hold on once. We'll endeavor to get Coach Woods back. Little bit of technical difficulty there. Certainly an interesting conversation, and great to have Coach Woods on. A legend in this area. We've certainly got some more questions for him going forward. Certainly a situation, a man who also well known in this area, coach at Powell Valley for a while, and I think we have reinstituted contact. Coach, do we have you back?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe our Wi-Fi went out all of a sudden here.
Okay.
So it's like I'm back in 4 Mile, where we always said we got Monday Night Football on Wednesday.
Certainly.
Good.
Certainly.
But I was telling about Bernard, and so I was taking xylocaine injections in my ankle joint for a bunch of the games my senior year just to get to play, and so I was pretty swollen after a game down in Auburn, and Coach Mears and Bernard was having knee problems. Coach Mears called me and I into his office on Tuesday after we got back late Monday night. And he said, you two guys are not going to practice one day this week, but you're going to play Saturday night against Kentucky. And, of course, Kentucky, that was the team that was the national NCAA runner-up in 75. And so I go to practice every day. I'm sitting over there in a chair on the side. I'm holding a basketball, and kind of just fiddling with it or whatever, just keeping my hands on the ball. Bernard doesn't show up the whole week for one practice. We don't even see him. So he goes from Wednesday through Friday, and nobody sees him. We go in that game on Saturday night, and he was just unstoppable. He wore Kentucky out, and they could not guard him anyway. And I just said that was so amazing to me that a guy could go the whole week, not touch a basketball, and come in and play like he played. And I think that showed what type of how blessed he was athletically as a basketball player, and also his determination was just unbelievable. But that was one of the amazing things I saw while I was there.
Well, and as great as Bernard was, Kentucky always seemed to bring out the best in him too.
Right, and that was the game. That was the famous game from earlier. We lost to them up in Lexington in early January. I think this game was about the second week of February, but back in early January, we lost there like 85-82, and it was just most physical game I was ever in. I mean, guys, I think Austin Clark going for a loose ball one time, Rick Roby just knocked him completely out going for a loose ball. And, of course, the next day in Knoxville on every TV station on the sports news, every time you turn it on, they're showing little clips from the game of, where we were just clobbered on rebounds or whatever, or loose basketballs. And they're playing the music in the background, the song Kung Fu Fighting. And so Coach Mears tells us in a meeting, he says, don't pay any attention to that stuff. Said, I did that. That's a bunch of foolishness. He said, but I promise you this, when they come back here in February, they won't touch us, because every time they breathe on us, it'll be a foul. And so he was right, and we won 103-98 in that game. So.
Jumping forward to your coaching career, and something that actually one of the reasons you're still a legend in this listening area, Coach. If you would talk a little bit about your time at Powell Valley.
Oh, I had a great time. Had so much fun there, and I always said one of the things about high school basketball, everybody talks about, Kentucky, all this and everything, and nobody really cares about it in Tennessee at all. I'll tell you what, I've never been to a place that loved basketball like those people did at Powell Valley. I don't know how many times, Keith, we played, and they had to lock the doors because nobody else could get in. And that was so much fun there. We just had a great time, had a lot of success and really good players. And our team in '79, we lost in the state championship to Bolton out of Memphis area, and they hadn't lost. They finished like They finished like 36-0. We finished 34-2, and had two tremendous players when I was there. Two guys that Knoxville News Sentinel named the scoring twins, and Barry Kincaid, who was from La Follette, and David Helton that was there, both about 6'5", and just two excellent players, two really good basketball players. So we had a lot of fun. But those people just love basketball. In fact, last year, of course, it's no longer there. It's part of Cumberland Gap High School now. And last year, my team at Wayne County, we went over to Cumberland Gap and we played Clinton, Tennessee. And we had a 40-year reunion of that 79 team. So it was really a great time to see all those guys. But those people of Powell Valley, they love their basketball.
Are those reunions of teams that have succeeded in seeing what your players have been able to do going forward in life? Is that one of the things that really makes coaching worthwhile?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, see those guys, and I love it when the guys, especially when they want to come back. And we have guys, and I'm not one of these coaches that's just so intense before a game. I don't want to see any player that's ever played for us, they can just walk in our locker room before a game or whenever they want. And we have a lot of guys. We'll have one or two players, from different eras that'll show up about every game and come back to the locker room. So that really makes it fun.
What was the ultimate kind of trigger that made you want to get into coaching?
Well, I don't know really. I just always felt like I wanted to do that, and Coach Mears knew that. Billy Justice told me one time that he felt like I probably got closer to Coach Mears than any player ever did. That Coach really kept his distance from people, and that he felt like I had influenced him more than any player that ever played at Tennessee. And I remember, again, going back to that Auburn game, I remember we were working out on a Sunday night, and they would always, when practice was over, they would say, all right, the bus is leaving in 30 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. And so I'd always try to hang around, shoot some extra shots, free throws and things like that before I went in to shower to get on the bus. And I'm out there shooting by myself. It's just me, and all of a sudden Coach Mears walks over and starts rebounding for me and throwing them back to me. Well, I shot one. It kind of hit off the side of the rim, bounced away out in the corner. He goes and gets it, picks it up, and turns and shoots it. Of course, he was left-handed. And I said, Coach, I've been here 4 years. I've never seen you shoot a basketball. And he looked at me and he said, I did that for a reason. He said, I know how bad you want to be a coach. And he said, I'm going to give you some advice. Don't ever shoot with your players. Don't ever play pickup games with them. Don't ever play one-on-one. He said, because they mistake kindness for weakness. He said, keep your distance. And so I never, in all my 40 years of coaching, I never played pickup games with my players.
And speaking of your players and the success you've had at Wayne County, Coach, for the uninitiated and people who don't follow it, talk about what an atmosphere it is at Rupp Arena for the Kentucky High School Sweet 16.
Oh, it's unbelievable. But it's not what it once was. I remember watching Allen Houston when he played, going against Richie Farmer, who played at Kentucky in the state championship. That would have been about 87, I believe. And it was sold out. There were 23,000 there to watch that game. In 89, my team, we lost in the state championship to Pleasure Ridge Park out of Louisville. We lost 75-73, and there were over 20,000 for that game. Now, it's gotten to where, used to it would be anywhere from 15 to 16,000 for every session. And the tournament starts on Wednesday with 16 teams. There's 4 games Wednesday, 4 games on Thursday, and then lines right on down through the weekend. And the attendance is not near what it was. They're probably now for a championship game now, they'll probably get anywhere from 10 to 12,000. But back in the 80s and early 90s, there were anywhere from 18, 20,000 watching those games. But it's just it's a unbelievable feeling. We've been fortunate enough here to make it. Since I've been here, we've made it 9 times, and before I got here in 1987, they had made it 1 time. So we've had a lot of success and a lot of fun over the years.
With all of that success and all of the accomplishments, being a National High School Athletic Coaches Association Hall of Famer, what motivates you and what keeps you going and keeps you coming to the gym every day, Coach?
I just like going to practice, and I like teaching people how to do it right. I get so frustrated watching games with fundamentals, how bad they are, and I was doing a little bit of an interview last night, and we were talking about some things about high school basketball, and I said, you can play fast, you can play slow, you can play zone, you can play man, you can do a lot of different things and still win, but I think the common denominator with all of it is, and it's not just the one-word discipline, it's consistent discipline and doing, my players know that every day I go in there, I'm not going to let them get away with bad fundamentals. I'm not going to come in one day and let it go and the next day rip them up, one side down the other. I'm going to rip you every time. It's not going to change. So I think, kids, I think it's important for kids to know and understand what the coach is what he's going to allow, and kind of like the old saying, we get what we tolerate. So I won't tolerate you not doing it right. Now, we may not win if we don't win every game, but we're still going to do things the right way. And so I get so frustrated watching games when guys do things like dribble a loose ball when the ball's loose instead of securing it, grabbing it, and then going with it. That just runs all over me, and then they get back tipped from behind because they're playing lazy and just dribbling the ball. Just a lot of little things like that I just have fun. There's a satisfaction of teaching people how to do that the right way and then seeing them do it on the court.
Is the erosion of fundamentals you described there, is part of that kids play too many games now and don't spend enough time in the gym practicing, working on their fundamentals?
I think there's something to that. I still go back and I still blame coaches. I think coaches are lazy. I think they'll just allow that. They don't see how important that is. And until they lose the ball, then they're ready to say something about it. And but I know the AAU circuit kids. I guess the biggest thing with that upsets me with the way the AAU circuit goes, I think kids have gotten to where they're kind of immune to losing because they go play a game. It's like I was talking about Ernie and Bernard. When you lose, you don't get back on the court forever. And with AAU, you lose one, the guys all high-five and shake hands with the other team, and then they go grab something to eat, and they play in another hour, and then they play in 2 hours. So they're playing 3 and 4 games in a day like that. And I don't think the winning part becomes as important because you're going to get to play again. And like I tell my guys every time we play, we have a game tonight, and we were talking about this a little bit yesterday. We just get to play once today. And we don't get a chance to, if we lose tonight, we don't get a chance to come back in 2 hours and try to correct it. We get one chance. And that's my biggest problem with AAU is the attitude that guys have about losing. They just kind of blow it off and go on to the next game.
And, Coach, I would be remiss given sitting here in the studios of WLAF, I didn't ask you for at least one story about a true La Follette legend and someone I know you knew well, Mr. Ed Bailoff.
Oh, he was great, yeah. And Mr. Bailoff was tremendous, too. When I was at Powell Valley, he was a big supporter and helped us financially in a bunch of ways with our basketball program there. So he was always a good friend and was really, really good to me. Probably kind of. I remember he and John Ward were following the bus because Mr. Bailoff wouldn't fly anywhere when we went to games, and so a lot of times John Ward would ride with him because they were really good friends, and I think he didn't want Mr. Bailoff to have to drive by himself. So we're headed to Lexington to play, and we get off in La Follette, the bus gets off in La Follette because it was snowing so bad, and I think they got afraid to drive their cars. So Mr. Bayoff and John Ward got on the bus with us and went from there on to Lexington. But I just remember him driving so many places and long trips to see us play.
Well, one of the stories that Mr. Bailoff always loved to tell on himself was that he would be so nervous during games, he would never actually stand out and watch the game. He would be up in the concourse, walking the concourse as the game was going on.
He sounds like that made me think of Kevin Feltner. I don't know if you've ever met Kevin, but Kevin runs the Tennessee Bobcats AAU team that my son played for, and Mikhail Foreman that played at Tennessee, and John Fulkerson played on. And in fact, I coached that team for a half of the summer one year because their coach had a son playing Little League Baseball, and he wanted to coach him in the All-Stars somewhere there in late June. So I finished out the year and had John and Kevin's wife would always come to the games, and every time we'd get in a tight game, she would go to the bathroom and stay until the game was over. And come back out and didn't even know who won or anything until it was over. But
well, and I just handed a note. Go ahead, Coach.
Speaking of our boy John Fulkerson, I stay in touch with John. Great kid and everything. And so I text him weekly, and I remind him he does need a haircut badly.
I think most people are going to concur with you on that one, Coach.
Of course, he's got a little bet going with one of his teammates from the Bobcats. That plays at I think he plays at UNC Asheville. It's a point guard, and they made a little bet before school started about which guy could go the longest, get their hair the longest, or whatever. So, but they both need a haircut. So,
absolutely, I think we would concur on that. We just handed. WLF historian Jim Freeman just handed me a note to tell you that WLF, in fact, broadcast the Powell Valley state title game in 1979.
1979, yeah. Got beat 64-62. Bolton had Cecil Dowell, if you remember him. He played point guard at Ole Miss.
Bolton, who ended Campbell, another area team, Wynn High School made the state tournament and played Bolton with Sylvester Gray, and Bolton also took them out.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But Coach, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think I speak for the audience when I say thank you for giving us a whole bunch of your time on a game day, and it is greatly appreciated, and it has been an absolute pleasure.
Well, I've had fun, and I'll tell you one quick one as we leave. How much I love to see Coach Mears. Coach Mears' will, he left me his orange Mercedes, which by the time he left it to me, it wouldn't run or anything. But he had an orange Mercedes, and he left it to me. And in his will, it said he left it to me because I was the only person he knew that hated Kentucky as much as he did. So.
Well, there you go. There you go. He obviously recognized some of himself in you, Coach.
Yeah.
Well, Coach,
it's been fun.
Good luck tonight. I think you've got Middlesboro tonight. Good luck.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That is volunteer legend Rodney Woods. And, folks, I hope you enjoyed that 1/3 as much as I did. That is some of the most fun I've ever had doing an interview right there. And a walk back in history from a true volunteer legend. We're pretty much up against it. We'll be back next week, 1 p.m. Hope to bring a show half as good as what we brought today. We'll talk to you again soon. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Here I am again. Said I wouldn't be back, but I was wrong. No, I can't pretend that I'm okay. It's been so long since I've seen the light of day. Lord, I need you in a mighty way. I wanna get up and out of the valley. I don't wanna stay anymore. I wanna get up and out of the valley. Take
up to myself. I only fall hard every time. Could you give me one more chance to walk out of my circumstance? I wanna get up and out of the valley. I don't wanna stay anymore. I wanna get up and out of the valley. Take me where I've never ever been before. Rescue me.
Was in a meeting, he says, don't pay any attention to that stuff. Said, I did that. That's a bunch of foolishness. He said, but I promise you this, when they come back here in February, they won't touch us because every time they breathe on us, it'll be a foul. And so he was right, and we won 103-98 in that game. So.
Jumping forward to your coaching career, and something that actually, one of the reasons you're We'll talk to you again soon. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bill Archin, you're listening to my radio station,
At the right
WLAF,
time, and it can
has
be
been since in the 60s.
This is 1450
A man who
WLAF,
also
WLAF, an FM translator, W265BQ, La Follette, Tennessee, USA.
Guard your small forward and center. You're well on your way to a pretty good team right there.
WLAF.
CBS News on the Hour, sponsored
Being
by
there
Rocket
watching
Mortgage by
to
Quicken
the
Loans.
I'm
double
Pam Coulter.
Bernard.
Democrats appear to be waging a losing battle for new evidence and witness testimony in President Trump's Senate
High School
impeachment
end up
trial.
at the University
House
of
Manager
Tennessee.
Zoe Lofgren.
This trial should not reward the president's unprecedented obstruction by allowing him to control what evidence
You're listening to Campbell County's very own sports talk show.
Republicans who say they'll vote no on calling witnesses. Former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly is quoted as saying a trial without
Pretty good team
witnesses
right
is
there.
only half a trial. Democrats say the evidence will come
Coach, you
out,
there?
and a new bombshell about what's in former National Security Advisor John Bolton's book has dropped.
The New York Times says John Bolton's book
Little
will
bit
tell of a
of
May
technical
meeting in the Oval Office in which Bolton was told by the president
certainly a
to call
interesting
Vladimir
conversation.
Zelensky,
Great to have
urge him
Coach.
to meet with Rudy Giuliani to discuss investigations.
A
The president
situation,
denies that
a man
meeting
who
ever took
also
place.
well known
House
in this
Manager
area.
Adam Schiff pointed to the
Coach
conflicting
at
stories.
Powell
in his
Valley,
plea
Coach at
for
Powell
witness
Valley for a
testimony.
while, and I
Let's
think
find
we
out.
may. I think we
Let's
have
put John Bolton under oath.
instituted
When Schiff
contact.
spoke, another
Coach, do we have
GOP
you back?
Senator Alaska's Lisa
Yeah,
Murkowski said she too would vote against calling witnesses.
Coach, you there?
Stephen
Coach, do we have you back?
CBS News, Washington.
Federal health officials are taking a rare step to stop the spread of the coronavirus in the U.S. They're imposing a 14-day quarantine on nearly 200 Americans who were evacuated from the Chinese city at the center of the outbreak. The CDC's Dr.